The Season of Discovery PTR has just been updated and the Blizzard devs have kind of been cooking. There's a lot of changes, class changes, nerfs, buffs, mostly buffs, and some bug fixes that we're going to go over today, as well as a change in the philosophy moving forward, specifically looking at things like tanks. Tanks are now going to be able to do more AoE, as well as warriors are getting their own world buff. Literally, warriors are getting an actual world buff because they are the class that scales the most with them, and whenever you lose world buffs, you actually get grief the most. So now you should be able to bring a weakened version of the rallying cry world buff as a warrior just for yourself and for your entire raid. But as we're finally getting Season of Discovery Phase 4 coming soon, hopefully an announce on when that actually happens, and you're probably fully raid logging now in Cataclysm, it's the perfect time to get into level 60 content, which is literally just the beginning of level 60 content, because as they do class changes, then eventually we can get all of the new raids they're working on. They just need to get the classes right first. So the first phase will obviously be like Molten Core, but I'm really excited for this. But with that being said, if you are playing Kata still, or if you are just still waiting for Deathwing and the later phases of Kata, then you might want to try something new. And with the return of the great calamity dragon that is Deathwing in Cataclysm Classic, we have another great dragon returning in today's video sponsor, Terrasland. I mean, just look at this announcement trailer, the destruction of the world, the claws of the dragon as it climbs forward just are so reminiscent of Deathwing, and even the Deathwing fight we're gonna get to experience later on this year. But we don't have to wait an entire year to hop in and fight against this dragon, because Terrasland is a cross-platform, free-to-play MMORPG that is out now globally. So get ready to embark through a new, vast fantasy world that's already being torn asunder by the Blight Dragon. And don't let these bright red eyes scare you off, because fighting dragons is what we do best. So accompanying this event, there will also be the Taurus Legendary Dungeon Tournament that you'll be able to play and compete on your PC or mobile, or even transition between playing on your computer and playing on your phone, because Terrasland shares the data, allowing you to do both. But you'll also get epic rewards just for signing up for the event. So download the game and hop into the world of Terrasland today. And getting back into Season of Discovery, we are getting a new PvP event, and we learned more about it. That is going to be the Blackrock Eruption. This will be every 2 hours, and it'll happen in Searing Gorge. Eventually, it'll happen in Burning Steppes also, but this is going to be a PvP PvE event. It'll be a phenomenal way for you to gain extra honor, because during this event, there will be massive gains to honor inside of Blackrock Mountain. That means that if you are PvPing, where everybody traditionally PvP'd back in the day, you're gonna farm honor so fast, you're gonna rank up so fast. But during this time, you will get literally 0 honor in open world PvP in Searing Gorge. This is trying to encourage us to finally go out and do the PvE aspects of the event instead of just getting griefed the entire time. So you will be able to get more Thorium Brotherhood and Hydraxian Waterlord reputation from this event. There will be more spawns and daily quests for you to deal with, but hopefully it won't be super griefed. Hopefully you will have a PvE aspect. Definitely people will grief though. And then all of the real PvP will happen in the mountain. It's just gonna be absolute madness. I don't know if you remember things like multi-boxers. Hopefully, I don't think you can do this the same way anymore, but multi-boxers coming out of the woodwork are gonna just absolutely delete people, as well as shamans, which I expected to get nerfed for something like this. Didn't seem like LE Shamans did. So let's break down what the class changes are actually. First of all, druids will now be able to use Wrath in tree form. This will allow you to actually put up your 20% nature damage debuff and also do a little bit of damage while you are healing if you are in tree form. This is essential, or else people would have never used it. Nourish will also now benefit from talents that benefit things like regrowth, and Alun's Fires now actually extends the duration of Moonfire and Starfire without a limit on this, meaning that you can extend the durations basically forever when doing this. Boomkins, rejoice, it's gonna be a lot easier for you. Moonkin form also provides the druid now with 2 extra spell power per level. So you will get 120 spell power at level 60 just for free for going into Moonkin form. And while you're a boomy, your dots can now crit. So you can now crit with your dots, and you can refresh a lot of your dots indefinitely. huge increases in stonks. And for feral druids, if you are tanking, your swipe, as I mentioned earlier, will now hit up to 10 targets. As for hunters, they fixed 2 bugs on the PTR, didn't change anything with melee hunters, which is now a class that is potentially absolutely dead. So we're probably going to see some changes. They got nuked. So Heart of the Lion, basically your King's buff now will last on the PTR. It was just a bug, and you can also summon pets. Mages, the hot streak rune has now been moved to your helm slot, so you can actually realistically test this, and you're going to see mages being incredibly powerful now. And also your rewind time was moved over to your wrist slot. Shadow Priest definitely saw some love. Vampiric Embrace now actually benefits from a ton of your talents, so your new dot also benefits from talents you would expect it to benefit from. You also no longer have a cooldown on the curses you can put up. So since priests have been putting up curses now with Eye of the Void, and you had to choose what you were going to do, basically that's no longer a CD you really have to worry about. And Pain and Suffering has been adjusted to now refresh the CD of whatever dot is on the target out of any of your dots: Shadow Word, Pain, Void Plague, or Vampiric Touch. Whichever one has the lowest actual time remaining, that will be the one that gets refreshed. Oh, and Mind Seer, your AoE ability, now also does damage to the primary target. Paladins got Divine Steed. This is probably one of my favorite changes, other than warriors getting basically rallying cry of the Dragon Slayer. Paladins got Divine Steed. Paladins, obviously the wheelchair class of the all wheelchair class. You now have Wings and Divine Steed. This is going to increase your movement speed by 100% for 3 seconds. And they also moved the Divine Light rune over to the cloak. And Divine Light now also benefits from whatever your healing goes to your Beacon of Light target. Hollowed Ground, which makes your Consecrate heal your friendly targets near you. You don't need to actually do damage to any targets in front of you or around you, which makes sense now. It is kind of like a holy spell. Consecrate is like an AoE heal, which is kind of crazy. Or whenever a tank pops down Consecrate, it'll AoE heal as well as do the AoE damage. And the dots that Ret Paladins get from Righteous Vengeance have been buffed by 50%. So whenever you crit with an ability, you will put up a dot on the targets, or multiple targets if you did Divine Storm, obviously, and this will be a stronger dot now. And lastly, the Aegis rune. The Aegis rune will now also allow you to proc Reckoning. So if you're a tank, you can basically wreck bomb people, which is kind of crazy, or you might be able to pull this off in PvP. For rogues, they fixed an issue where Phantom Knives was generating actual energy back from offhand crits. Now, this is kind of how it works in Wrath. So Phantom Knives shouldn't really give you like offhand crits. So it shouldn't really have too much effect on you. But the super busted version of Crimson Tempest, this was your brand new AoE finishing move, which was proccing Relentless Strikes, would just give you infinite energy, literally infinite energy. And it was actually stronger than using Phantom Knives, which is crazy to think about. This has been fixed. Instead of every single target that it hits with the AoE finishing move giving you energy back, now it's just the 125 energy you get back after using the finishing move. It was like so obvious that this was going to be fixed and that it was super broken. So this is actually a normal change. And at the same time, some AoE love here. Shuriken Toss now actually gives you 1 extra combo point per enemy hit with it, and it has a 30-second CD, as well as Poison Knife. Poison Knife now refunds 5 energy per actual stack of deadly poison up on the target. So if you're playing any of the other builds, especially if you're playing like Sinister Strike, this is a nice thing for you. Also, now if you are on the PTR, there was a bug where if you had the new poison, which everyone has, Occult Poison, which gives 10% spell damage for everyone, huge buff. Now this actually stacks with other rogues, or at least the buff doesn't stack with other rogues, but at least you can have 2 rogues in your group and it counts as putting poisons up, so you can use other abilities like Envenom and actually do damage. And lastly, the defense attack power scaling. All tanks are getting more basically damage or attack power from their defense skill. That was actually moved from the rune Rolling with the Punches to the Blade Dance rune. So it's just easier for you to actually get the benefit from that as a tank rogue. They did a similar thing with Shaman tanks. So the Shield Mastery rune now actually triggers your attack power from your defense skill whenever you use Flame Shock. Also, your attack speed with two-handers, Shaman two-handed enhance enjoyers hopefully are back. The bonus attack speed you get now is buffed up to 50%, and Maelstrom weapon will now proc significantly more often if you are using a two-hander. Molten Blast also now hits up to 10 targets in front of you, and way better than that for shamans, your imbues, your weapon imbuements, now instead of lasting 5 minutes will finally last 1 full hour. Warlocks got a few changes that are actually pretty nice for them. Lake of Fire, the rework of Lake of Fire, we were all wondering what was going to happen. Instead of getting 40% damage like they had in earlier phases, now Lake of Fire actually just allows you to cast Rain of Fire instantly, and then you can move on. It does have a CD now, but it allows you to do a little bit of AoE, and it might be some increase in damage on single target. I'm not even sure. Shadow Cleave as a tank also now obviously hits 10 targets. Backdraft, the ability that gives you extra casting speed, got increased from a 10-second buff to a 15-second buff. Also, the stacking attack power bonus that your Felguard gets has been buffed to now 5 additional % attack power for 10 seconds, stacking up to 10 times. We also saw Drain Soul now become an absolute execute. It does 300% extra damage when a target is below 20% if you're using Soul Siphon. So Warlocks, pretty much every spec of Warlocks now has like a real execute, which is gonna be interesting. If a fight lasts really long, Warlocks are gonna shoot up just like Warriors always shoot up at the end of every fight. So this definitely makes them a lot more viable to maybe even bring more than one of, you know? You can maybe even stack them. Oh, and Mark of Chaos has been redesigned. Let me just read this for you guys because I'm kind of a bot, but it now causes Curse of Agony and Curse of Doom to apply Mark of Chaos on the target for the entire duration, which now reduces the target's resistance by up to 75 and increases the spell damage taken by 10%. And lastly, Warriors, like I mentioned earlier, they get their very own rallying cry of the Dragon Slayer Light, as Blizzard is calling it. The actual name of it is Valor of Azeroth. That will grant all party and raid members 90 attack power at level 60, as well as 5% crit for spells and normal attacks. Basically, this is a weaker version of Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer, but it is your own world buff in case you lose world buffs. And the developer notes were essentially saying that Warriors scale the best with world buffs. As we all know, it's like the most obvious thing ever, and it really, really hurts you. You're the strongest class by far if you have world buffs, and the weakest class if you don't, or one of the weakest, let's be realistic. So now they are lowering that kind of floor for you, not raising the ceiling, but lowering the floor. And this will make things a lot better for you if you lose world buffs, or if you're one of those players that just hates getting world buffs. You definitely don't have to get them anymore because you have a world buff out there. Now, Single-Minded Fury, the talent that was nerfed quite a bit, now actually will increase your attack power by 10%. Basically stacking your normal attack power, it'll stack 5 times, 2% 5 times, 10% actual attack power, which is really nice. It just won't have a threat reduction anymore. If you go Gladiator stance, you will now actually have increased rage generation if the target is not attacking you. This was one of the issues, was gonna be kind of rage gen as Glad stance, because you're used to having a shield and a weapon and being attacked, getting rage from the damage you intake. But Gladiator stance you're not a tank, you're DPS. This actually should be a pretty significant DPS increase. We'll have to see how much it is, but that'll be a pretty huge one. And now also Thunderclap hits up to 10 targets, allowing warrior tanks to be legitimately viable in AoE, something they were absolutely missing. Lastly, Shield Slam did get buffed as well. Shield Slam is now up by 15% of your attack power as additional damage, meaning that warrior tanks, again, are probably actually realistically really back. Warriors are looking stronger now. They were looking, it was hard to judge how they were looking on the earlier PTR because the big difference is like warriors need world buffs to be able to really test them realistically. That's the only thing you would ever have is warriors with world buffs to even see how they are doing. So there's some huge changes. I'm honestly really excited for these. I think the game of Classic is still going to be there. The heart is still going to be there, but we now have more abilities. But let me know what you think. Are you liking this direction that Blizzard is going? And also, if you need something else to play right now, of course, shout out to Taurus Land for sponsoring the video. Check it out, a new MMO. I think Max is playing like right now. So I'll see you guys all on the next one.